The galaxy was silent, but it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of fear. From the glowing centers of star systems to the cold edges of forgotten worlds, countless races lived in chains, their voices low, their eyes always watching. The skies, they whispered stories about the rulers who controlled everything. The rulers who punished anyone who dared to dream of freedom. The overlords were ancient, their empire stretched across the stars. They had ruled for so long that many believed they would rule forever. They had ships larger than moons, weapons strong enough to turn planets into dust, and armies that never rested. Every race had seen what happened when someone resisted. A planet would vanish in fire. A city would be erased in a single strike. Whole civilizations were broken in one day. The lesson was clear: obey or be destroyed. And so the galaxy obeyed. Alien children grew up learning to bow before soldiers. Markets were watched by guards, and every conversation was filled with fear. No one trusted anyone. No one dared to hope. Life was survival, not living. The overlords fed on fear. They wanted silence. They wanted obedience. They wanted a galaxy, without questions, and they almost succeeded. But in the shadows, whispers began to rise. The whispers spoke of a new species, a strange people from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. These beings did not have the strongest ships. They did not have the biggest weapons, but they had something dangerous, something the overlords could not control: courage. The whispers were faint, carried by travelers and smugglers. No one believed them at first, after all. Every species had once tried to resist, and everyone had failed. What could a small species from a forgotten world do against the power of the overlords? Still, the stories spread. Some said these humans did not bow. Others said they looked their enemies in the eye without fear. A few claimed they even fought back. No one knew if it was true, but even the rumor was dangerous. For the first time in centuries, hope flickered in the dark. The overlords noticed. They always noticed. They sent spies. They sent warnings. They prepared their fleets because they understood one truth: fear was only strong as long as no one challenged it. If even one spark of defiance rose, the whole galaxy could catch fire. On the world of Sirath, an elder told her people, "The chains are strong, but I heard of a people who break chains with their will, not with their weapons." The crowd listened, fearful, but their hearts beat faster. On the mining moons of Varel, workers whispered at night about humans, imagining what it would mean if someone truly stood against the Empire. The overlords increased patrols. They crushed small uprisings. Before they began, they burned villages to remind the galaxy of their strength, yet the whispers continued, unstoppable like the wind. For the first time in ages, fear was no longer perfect, and in the darkness of space, among silent stars, a new question was born in many alien minds, a question more dangerous than any weapon. What if the humans are not afraid, and what if we do not need to be afraid either? The galaxy had lived in fear for centuries, but now something was changing. Something small, something fragile, yet powerful. It was the beginning of a storm, and the overlords, who had ruled unchallenged for thousands of years, felt the first crack in their empire. They did not yet know it, but their age of fear was ending, because humanity had entered the stage, and humanity did not kneel. The whispers moved faster than ships, faster than armies, faster than fear itself. Across dark trade routes and secret stations, voices spoke of the humans. No one knew exactly who started the stories, but soon, every market, every hidden corner of the galaxy carried the same question: who are they? The overlords hated questions. They had built their empire on silence. So when whispers about humanity spread, they grew nervous. They did not show it. They never did. But in the shadows, they listened carefully. Merchants told tales of human stubbornness. "They do not bow," one alien said in a tavern, his eyes darting around to make sure no soldier was listening. "They stare at soldiers as if they are not gods, as if they are only flesh and blood." Others shook their heads, unable to believe it. On the moon colonies of Atris, miners gathered. At night, after long shifts, they spoke quietly about a human captain who refused to give up his ship, even when outnumbered. "He fought until the last breath," one miner said. And they say the overlords lost that battle. Another whispered, impossible. But still, he smiled. Everywhere the stories grew larger, the humans became figures of myth. Some said they carried fire in their hearts. Some claimed they were born without fear. Some even believed they could not be broken. The overlords tried to stop it. They sent soldiers to silence anyone who spoke of humans. They erased records. They banned travel near the human homeworld. Yet the more they tried to erase the whispers, the louder they became. For races that had lived in fear for generations, even the idea of defiance was intoxicating. The thought that someone, somewhere, was standing tall gave them strength in the cold prisons of Elar. Prisoners passed messages scratched into the walls. They drew human faces they had never seen. They carved words like freedom and resistance. Guards tried to scrape them away, but new ones always appeared in the marketplaces of Terran. Prime. Young aliens played games where one child pretended to be an overlord soldier and the other pretended to be a human. And for the first time in centuries, the soldier lost. The galaxy was changing. Not in great battles, not yet, but in imagination, in hope, in dreams. Still, the humans were not myths. They were real, and they were watching too. From their small blue planet, Earth, humans learned quickly about the galaxy. They saw the overlords, they saw the fear, and they understood the truth. Fear was the strongest weapon in the galaxy, stronger than any fleet, stronger than any gun. And so they decided to challenge it. The first contact had not been peaceful. An overlord scout ship tried to demand submission. The humans refused. They spoke simply, "We do not kneel." The scout ship threatened fire, but the humans fired first. The ship was destroyed. The overlords laughed at first. It was a single skirmish, meaningless compared to their empire. But the galaxy did not laugh. The galaxy whispered. They fought back. Soon, smugglers carried news to every corner, in smoky bars and secret tunnels. The same words repeated again and again. The humans fought back, and they did not lose. This was more dangerous than any battle, the overlords knew it. One victory could be dismissed, but a story could not be killed. In the council chambers of distant races, leaders argued quietly. Some were afraid. If we listen to these whispers, we will be destroyed. Others were hopeful. If the humans can resist, perhaps we can too. For the first time in ages, choices returned. And among the common people, among the miners, the farmers, the prisoners, hope became fuel. The whispers of humanity grew into something larger, not just rumor, not just story, but belief. On a distant world named Kareth, an elder stood before her people. I do not know these humans, she said, but I know this, the overlords fear them, and if the rulers fear, then perhaps they can fall. Her words spread across the system like fire. The overlords sensed the danger. They ordered their fleets closer to human space. They prepared to crush this small species before the whispers grew into rebellion, but it was already too late. The galaxy had tasted something they had forgotten long ago. Hope, and hope was contagious. The humans had not yet fought great wars. They had not yet built grand alliances, but they had already done something greater. They had changed the galaxy's heart. They had broken the silence. In the deep void where stars shone cold and endless, the whispers of humanity echoed. And with each whisper, the chains of fear grew weaker. The galaxy was beginning to wake. And the overlords, for the first time in thousands of years, felt a chill of doubt, because somewhere in the dark a small voice kept growing louder, a voice that said, "Enough is enough." The galaxy had heard the whispers, but whispers were not proof. They were shadows, uncertain and fragile. The overlords believed the humans would break like all the others. They believed fear would crush them as it had crushed every race before. But they were wrong, and the proof began with first contact. It was not a grand meeting of diplomats, it was not a ceremony of peace. It began with a simple threat. An overlord warship entered human space, black metal stretching like a beast of the void, its weapons glowing with cruel power. The message was simple. broadcast across every channel, kneel or burn. For other races, those words had always been the end. Entire worlds had bent their knees, entire civilizations had surrendered at the first demand, but Earth did not. On the surface, leaders met in tense halls, generals and scientists argued, some voices called for surrender. We cannot fight them, they are too strong. Others demanded defiance. If we bow once, we bow forever. The decision was made. Humanity would not kneel. The Overlord ship sent soldiers to land, tall and armored, their voices like thunder. They expected submission, they expected fear. But what they found was resistance. In the streets of a coastal city, humans stood together. Unarmed, staring up at the invaders, the commander raised his weapon and shouted, "Kneel before your masters." But no one moved. An old woman in the crowd whispered, "We already have a master. It is freedom." Her voice carried. It echoed through the silence, and the soldiers froze. The overlords were confused. They had faced armies, fleets, and rebellions, but they had never faced something like this. Defiance without weapons, courage without fear. The commander grew angry. He raised his weapon to strike the old woman, but a young human soldier stepped forward. He carried no grand technology, no alien weapon, only a simple rifle. He aimed it steady, his voice calm. "We do not kneel." The shot rang out. The first blood of resistance spilled. The overlord soldier fell. Silence followed, heavy and endless. Then chaos erupted. The humans fought not with greater strength, not with advanced power, but with unity. They used streets as traps, buildings as shields. They fought with everything they had. The overlords were shocked. This was supposed to be easy, a simple lesson. But instead, they faced a storm. In orbit, the warship opened fire, burning lines of destruction across the land. Yet humanity did not surrender. They pulled the wounded to safety. They regrouped. They struck back again and again, small victories, but victories all the same. The galaxy watched, at first in secret, but soon openly, messages carried across hidden networks. The humans fight. The humans do not bow. The humans resist. On distant worlds, prisoners whispered of the first shot. Rebels spoke of the coastal city. The name of Earth became something greater than a planet. It became a symbol. The overlords could not allow it. They gathered fleets. They sent more soldiers. They promised to erase humanity from the stars. Yet each act of destruction only spread the story further. In one battle, a single human ship faced a fleet of 3 cruisers. Outnumbered, outgunned. The humans fought until the last engine burned. They did not survive. But the galaxy remembered. They stood until the end, the whispers said. They do not fear death. They do not kneel. The first contact had become more than an event. It had become a spark. On the mining colonies of Varel, workers stopped bowing when soldiers passed. On the prison worlds of Ilar, prisoners shouted the words, "We do not kneel." Before guards silenced them, on the free ports at the edge of the galaxy, smugglers painted human symbols on their ships. Everywhere, courage spread. The overlords understood the danger too late. They thought fear was eternal, but now fear had cracked, and through that crack light entered. In their dark councils, overlord leaders debated, "If humanity continues, the galaxy will rise." Another warned, "Then we must crush them before the fire spreads." They sent more fleets, more destruction, but it only added to the story because the galaxy no longer saw only destruction. It saw resistance. It saw defiance. It saw hope. Humanity had made first contact, not through peace, not through surrender, but through fire and blood and unbroken will. And though the cost was heavy, though cities burned and lives were lost, the galaxy now knew one truth. The humans were real, and they were not afraid. The galaxy had lived in silence for so long that hope felt dangerous. But after humanity's first defiance, hope began to grow like fire in dry grass. Small at first, but unstoppable once it spread. On distant mining worlds, slaves worked under the iron watch of overlord soldiers. They carried heavy loads, beaten and broken. Yet whispers reached even here, whispers of humans who stood tall against the empire. For the first time, The slaves lifted their heads a little higher. In one forgotten system, a group of alien workers refused to bow when a patrol arrived. The commander shouted, his weapon ready. But the workers stood still, silent, refusing to kneel. The commander killed one to teach the others, yet none moved. They stared back with steady eyes, and for the first time, an overlord patrol left in unease. That was how rebellion began, not with fleets, not with weapons, but with courage. Across the stars, small sparks appeared. A farmer on Terran hid fugitives. A mechanic on the moons of Siral sabotaged an overlord transport. Prisoners carved the words, "We do not kneel," into stone walls. The Empire had tried to erase the idea, but the idea had already taken root. The overlords grew nervous. Their empire was built on the certainty of fear, but now that certainty was cracking, still, they laughed at the thought of rebellion. They said, "These sparks are nothing. They will burn out as they always do." They had said the same for humanity, but the humans had not burned out. They had burned brighter. On Earth, leaders gathered in dimly lit rooms, maps of the stars glowing across the table. They knew humanity could not fight alone. Their fleets were small, their weapons limited. But they understood something the overlords had forgotten: unity. "We do not fight only for Earth," one commander said. "We fight for every world that has ever lived in chains." The others nodded because they knew the truth. Humanity's rebellion was no longer only theirs. It belonged to the galaxy. The first alliance was not grand. It was not thousands of ships. It was a handful of alien rebels who found courage in the human story. A small band of fighters from the colonies of Atris, a group of escaped slaves from the mines of Varel, a few smugglers who refused to bend. They joined the humans. It was not much, but it was enough to light the spark. Together they struck at small targets. Convoys, patrols, supply stations. Each victory was tiny compared to the size of the Empire, yet each one carried a message. The overlords can bleed. On the prison moons, the news spread faster than chains could hold it. Inmates cheered in secret. Their guards grew nervous because the more the humans and their allies struck, the more courage spread. The Empire responded with fire. They destroyed villages. They burned entire forests. They made examples of planets. Yet the more they punished, the more the galaxy saw their weakness. For centuries, the overlords had seemed untouchable, godlike. But now they looked desperate, and desperation was dangerous. On the free stations of the Outer Rim, traders argued in hushed voices. If the humans survive, if they keep fighting, the Empire will fall. Others shook their heads. If we join them, we will all die. But even those who feared still felt the spark deep inside. The rebellion was not yet an inferno, but it was growing. In the shadows of a ruined city, a human soldier stood beside an alien rebel, both scarred, both exhausted. They looked at the burning wreck of an overlord supply depot, and the soldier whispered, "This is only the beginning." And he was right. Across the galaxy, stories spread faster than fleets. Stories of humans standing beside aliens, stories of victories that should not have been possible, stories of courage that refused to die. The overlords sent spies. They spread lies. They tried to turn the galaxy against humanity. But the stories were stronger than fear. Because every world that had once lived in silence now carried a single question: what if we rise? On Kareth, a young child looked at the stars and asked her mother, "Will the humans come here?" And the mother, for the first time in her life, answered with hope, "Yes, they will, and when they do, we will stand with them." The spark of rebellion was alive. The overlords still ruled. Their fleets still stretched across the stars. Their armies still numbered in the millions. But they no longer ruled unchallenged. Something new had entered the galaxy. Something the overlords could not crush with weapons. Something stronger than fear. It was the spark of rebellion, and the galaxy was ready to burn. The overlords had power that seemed eternal. Their fleets darkened the stars, their weapons tore planets apart. Their soldiers were feared across the galaxy. Yet something strange was happening. Their victories no longer felt certain. Their enemies no longer trembled. Because humanity had revealed a weapon the galaxy had never seen. And it was not forged of steel or fire. It was not a machine of war. It was something invisible yet unstoppable. It was will. The humans did not fight with the biggest ships. Their fleets were small compared to the Empire's armadas. Their technology was clever but not unmatched. Yet every battle proved one thing. Humans refused to surrender. On the burning plains of Cyril, an overlord general sent his troops to crush a small human unit. Outnumbered 10-1. The humans fought for days. They retreated, regrouped, fought. Again, every time they should have fallen, they rose back stronger. When the battle ended, the humans had lost half their number, yet they held the ground. The general whispered in fear. They are not soldiers, they are storms. Alien allies noticed it too. A virile miner who had joined the rebellion asked a human captain, "Why do you keep fighting, even when you are certain to lose?" The captain smiled with tired eyes. "Because losing while standing is better than living on our knees." The miner repeated those words to others, and soon they spread across the galaxy like fire. The overlords could not understand it. Their empire was built on obedience. Their soldiers followed orders without question. But humans did not think like that. They questioned, they adapted, they resisted. When a battle was lost, humans did not fall into despair. They turned defeat into lesson. When a leader was killed, another rose in their place. When their homes were burned, they rebuilt with fiercer determination. This was their secret weapon. Hope. In a galaxy where hope had been strangled for centuries, humanity carried it like a torch, and that torch lit the way for others. The rebellion began to grow not because of human technology, but because of human spirit. Alien races who had never dared to dream of freedom now found themselves inspired. They saw humanity bleeding, suffering, sacrificing, and yet never bowing. And they thought, if they can do it, so can we. In one system, a small band of rebels held off an overlord patrol long enough for civilians to escape. Later, it was discovered that half of the fighters had been humans, the rest aliens who once feared the Empire too much to act. They stood together side by side and they won. The galaxy whispered again, louder than before. The humans share their fire. The overlords grew desperate. They unleashed horrors to remind the galaxy of fear. Cities erased, moons shattered, whole species threatened. Yet even these acts failed to silence the growing roar of resistance. Instead, the Empire's cruelty became fuel. Every world destroyed became a story of martyrdom. Every atrocity became another reason to fight. In the dark councils of the overlords, voices rose in anger. This species should be weak. They are small, they are fragile. Why do they not break? Another voice answered, heavy with fear. Because their weapon is not flesh. It is not steel. It is something we cannot kill. Meanwhile, among the rebels, something new began to grow. Unity. Humans did not keep their courage for themselves. They shared it. They taught others how to fight not only with weapons, but with belief. They taught alien rebels how to organize, how to turn fear into anger, anger into action. On a hidden base, a young alien asked a human soldier, "What if we fail?" The soldier placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we fail standing. And another will rise as long as someone remembers the dream we never lose." The words struck deep, because in the galaxy's long history of oppression, no one had spoken like that before. The humans had revealed their secret weapon, not bombs, not ships, but courage, unity, and the refusal to kneel. And as more races joined the rebellion, as the spark spread into flame, the overlords realized a terrible truth. They had built their empire on fear, but fear was no longer enough, because now the galaxy had hope, and hope, once born, could not be killed. The humans had given it life, and it was growing, stronger with every battle, brighter with every sacrifice, unstoppable like the rising sun. The secret was no longer secret. It was written in every whisper, in every shout, in every act of defiance. Humanity's weapon was the one thing the Empire could never command, never steal, never destroy. It was the human spirit, and it was ready to set the galaxy free. The rebellion had been only sparks until now, small acts of courage, whispers of defiance, but a spark cannot remain forever. Sooner or later, it must become fire, And that fire was born in humanity's first true victory. The overlords had chosen their target carefully. They wanted to crush the humans in front of the galaxy, to make an example that would erase all whispers. The target was Arkan Station, a massive supply hub orbiting a barren moon. From here the Empire fed its fleets. It was guarded by cruisers, soldiers, and endless fear. The overlords believed no one would dare to strike it, but the humans dared. The fleet that gathered was small, a handful of human warships patched and scarred, joined by a few alien vessels. Rebels with little training and little hope. Yet they carried something heavier than steel, the will to fight. The plan was madness: attack a fortress with scraps, challenge giants with sticks. Yet the humans smiled, because madness had always been their strength. The battle began with silence. The rebel fleet drifting from the shadows of the moon, their engines dim, their signals masked. Then came the first shot, a single lance of fire cutting through the void, striking an overlord patrol ship. The galaxy would later say that was the moment everything changed, one beam of light in endless darkness. The Empire's cruisers roared to life, weapons glowing, alarms echoing across the station. The rebels charged, their ships trembling under the strain, shields flickering, hulls breaking, yet they did not stop. A human commander's voice carried across the fleet, calm and steady. "Hold the line. Even if we fall, let the galaxy see we stood." The fighting was brutal. The overlords unleashed firepower that should have erased the rebels in minutes. But the rebels adapted. Humans used daring maneuvers, turning debris into shields, hiding in the station's shadow, striking fast and vanishing like ghosts. One human frigate, the Resolute, rammed an enemy cruiser, sacrificing itself to tear open the giant ship. The explosion lit the void, and the rebels cheered even as they mourned. On the surface of the station, rebel strike teams fought in narrow corridors, humans alongside aliens. Step by step pushing forward, they were outnumbered, yet they refused to retreat. A Varel miner swung his weapon and shouted, "For freedom!" A human soldier covered him with fire. An Atris smuggler hacked into the station's systems, doors opening, alarms blaring, chaos spreading. The Empire had never faced enemies like this. Enemies who did not fear death. Enemies who fought with passion. Hours passed. The battle stretched into the endless night, ships burning, fighters spiraling into the void, screams echoing through, comms yet the rebels held. Then came the moment the galaxy would never forget. The rebels broke through the defenses and reached the core of the station. Explosives planted, systems overloading. The overlords scrambled to stop them, but it was too late. Arkan Station exploded in fire and light, a fortress that had stood for centuries torn apart by courage, its wreckage scattering across the stars. Rebel fleet, broken and bleeding, limped away. Many ships lost, many fighters gone, yet they carried something greater than victory. They carried proof. For the first time, the overlords had been defeated. The galaxy felt it like thunder. Prisoners shouted in their cells, miners raised fists in secret, traitors whispered louder than ever before. The humans won. The Empire can bleed, the giants are not gods. The overlords tried to cover it. They told the galaxy it was nothing, a small skirmish, a meaningless loss, but lies could not bury fire. The story of Arkan. Station spread faster than light, carried on smugglers' tongues, painted on walls, whispered in dreams, and everywhere the words repeated, "The first victory is ours." In dark council chambers, overlord leaders argued. Some raged, demanding extermination, others worried, their voices low. "If the galaxy believes they can win, then they will fight, and if they fight, we may fall." Meanwhile, among the rebels, among the humans, there was grief for the dead, scars for the wounded, but there was also pride, a pride that could not be stolen. On Earth, bells rang in hidden cities. On Kareth, children painted stars with human symbols. On the prison moons, inmates whispered the name of the battle like prayer. Arkan Station was gone, but its fire burned, brighter than ever. The rebellion was no longer a whisper, no longer a dream. It was real. It was alive. And the overlords, for the first time in their reign of terror, looked at the stars and felt something they had not known in ages. Fear, because The galaxy had seen the first victory, and it would not be the last. The galaxy could not forget Arkan Station. For centuries, the overlords had been untouchable, their victories absolute, their rule unquestioned. But now the impossible had happened. They had been defeated, their fortress turned to dust by rebels who were never meant to win. The news spread like wildfire, not in official channels, not in empire broadcasts, but in whispers, in smuggler tales, in prisoner shouts, in graffiti painted on walls, the words repeated again and again. The humans won, and with those words came something more dangerous than any weapon: hope. On the mining moons of Varel, workers once bent under heavy chains stood taller. One refused to bow when guards entered. Others followed, their fear thinning. On the prison world of Ilar, an inmate carved a human symbol into the stone floor. Guards tried to erase it, but more appeared, walls filled with marks of defiance. On Kareth, a teacher told her students, "The Empire is not eternal. The humans have proved it." And young hearts burned with dreams they had never dared before. The rebellion grew like a storm. Small groups of aliens who had once lived in silence now began to act. A mechanic sabotaged an overlord warship. A farmer hid fugitives in his barn. Smugglers carried weapons and hope across the stars. The humans did not fight alone anymore. Allies began to rise. From the frozen worlds of Atris came smugglers turned soldiers. From the deep tunnels of Varel came miners turned warriors. From forgotten stations came refugees ready to fight. The overlords tried to crush it quickly. They sent fleets, they burned cities, they destroyed villages to show their strength. But the fire only spread faster, because every act of cruelty became fuel. Every death became a reason to fight. Human leaders understood it well. In hidden bases, they gathered with alien allies, maps glowing before them, their fleets still small, their weapons still limited, but their voices steady. "We will not fight for Earth alone," one commander said. "We will fight for every world that still dreams of freedom." And the galaxy listened. More rebels joined, bringing their stories, their scars, their anger. A smuggler spoke. "I lost my home to the overlords. I thought nothing could change. Then I heard about the humans. Now I will fight." A miner said, "I was born in chains, but my children will not be." The fire of rebellion burned brighter. The overlords began to fear it in their dark chambers, they argued. "The humans are dangerous not because of their weapons, but because they give courage," one said. Another replied, "Then we must break them, crush them, show the galaxy their weakness." But it was too late. The galaxy no longer saw weakness. It saw resistance. In space, rebel fleets grew larger, still fragile compared to the Empire, but stronger than ever before. Human captains fought beside alien commanders, their ships painted with new symbols, flags of unity. In battle after battle, the rebels struck. Convoys destroyed, patrols ambushed, supply lines cut. Small victories that echoed louder than great wars. Everywhere the galaxy whispered the same words: "The fire rises." On worlds long forgotten, rebels sang songs of humanity, not songs of myths, but songs of defiance, songs that gave strength to fight another day. And still the humans led. Not because they demanded it, but because they inspired it. They bled first, they stood first, they fought hardest, and others followed. In one battle, a human frigate shielded alien transports with its own body, burning until it was gone. But the transports survived, and the survivors carried the story across the stars. They died for us, for strangers, for freedom. The rebellion was no longer fragile, no longer hidden. It had become a fire, bright enough to be seen across the galaxy. The overlords tightened their grip, their fleets doubled patrols, their soldiers carried out punishments more brutal than ever. Yet it only showed their fear. And when tyrants show fear, their power begins to fade. The galaxy understood. The overlords were not gods. They were only rulers who had ruled too long, rulers who could be defeated, and so the rebellion rose higher. In the shadows of a ruined city, a child looked at the stars and whispered, "One day the humans will come." Her father, scarred from years of silence, nodded and said, "And when they do, we will stand with them." The fire had begun with a spark, but now it burned without chains, without walls, unstoppable. The humans had shown the way, and the galaxy had followed. The rising fire was here, and it would not go out.